Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something literally all of us have agonized over at some point. Why do we fall for the people we do? And more specifically, why do men and women so often seem to speak entirely different languages when it comes to what they want out of a relationship? If you've ever felt completely baffled by a partner's behavior, trust me, you are not alone.
Why is dating so incredibly hard? We all universally desire love and connection, right? So why is something so natural filled with so much inevitable conflict, misunderstanding, and, well, drama? For millennia, poets and philosophers have tried to figure this out by looking to fate or the stars. But today, we're going to look somewhere else entirely, our evolutionary past. So here's our roadmap for today. First, the data of desire. Then, biological asymmetry, female strategies, male strategies, evolutionary conflict, and finally, achieving harmony.
All right, let's jump into part 1, the data of desire.
To figure out if our dating habits are just modern culture or actual hardwired science, evolutionary psychologist David M. Buss looked at a massive data set. We're talking 10,047 individuals surveyed across 37 different cultures, spanning 5 continents. And what the data revealed was absolutely wild. Beneath all of our modern dating apps and courtship rituals are deeply rooted universal evolutionary strategies.
Moving right along to part 2, biological asymmetry.
So, what exactly is biological asymmetry? Well, it's basically the evolutionary reality that the sexes have vastly different minimum required investments of time, energy, and risk to successfully reproduce. It is the absolute pivot point where male and female evolutionary logic fundamentally splits. Think about it. For a woman, a reproductive decision means a massive biological commitment, 9 months of pregnancy plus years of heavy childcare. And her opportunities are limited by a finite number of eggs. But for a man, the minimum biological investment is literally just a few minutes of enthusiastic activity, and he has virtually unlimited sperm. It's an insane contrast. Because a bad mating decision costs a woman so much more biologically, evolution naturally drove women to become the choosier sex.
Which leads us perfectly into part 3, female strategies, or what women want.
Because of that huge biological investment we just talked about, women across all 37 of those surveyed cultures evolved a very specific profile for a long-term mate. Historically, survival depended on a partner who could provide. So social status and ambition, they're highly valued as signals of future resources. Physical health indicates good genes, while emotional stability and kindness mean he's likely to stick around and actually help with the kids. And honestly, even in modern societies where women are totally financially independent, these ancient preferences for a supportive, capable partner still heavily persist.
Now let's flip the script. Part 4, male strategies, or what men want.
Given that men have such a low minimum biological investment, they evolved to prioritize fertility over resources. It's not just modern superficiality, guys. It's deep ancestral programming. Men universally place a higher value on physical attractiveness in youth because, biologically speaking, youth equals years of childbearing potential, and beauty is basically just a visual proxy for health. But they do also deeply value kindness and understanding. Plus, there's one other major priority for men, and it brings up a really fascinating evolutionary hurdle.
That hurdle is paternal uncertainty. Look, throughout human history, a woman always knew for an absolute fact that a child was hers. A man could never be 100% sure. Evolutionarily speaking, a man who unknowingly spends his resources raising another man's child suffers a massive genetic loss. Because of this, male psychology evolved a very deep-seated concern for chastity and fidelity. It's a literal survival tactic to guarantee paternity.
And that brings us to part 5, evolutionary conflict.
When these completely different reproductive strategies collide, it creates inevitable tension, especially when it comes to jealousy. Men are typically way more devastated by sexual infidelity because, again, it triggers that deep ancestral alarm bell of paternal uncertainty. Women, on the flip side, are usually more devastated by emotional infidelity. If a man falls in love with someone else, it triggers a woman's evolutionary fear that he's going to withdraw his vital resources and protection. It is the exact same emotion, jealousy, but with entirely different biological triggers.
This underlying friction turns dating into a sort of invisible evolutionary arms race. Both sides have evolved hidden strategies to get what they want. Men, for example, might exaggerate how committed they are, just to obtain short-term sex. In response to that, women evolved a highly tuned radar for deception, often demanding intense courtship rituals to prove a guy is genuinely invested. But women definitely play the game too, using short-term mating to get immediate resources or practicing mate switching, which is basically testing out a new partner before leaving their current one. It's a constant, subconscious push and pull.
And, as we all know, sometimes that push and pull ends in a breakup. We usually go through these 5 classic stages: dissatisfaction, withdrawal, negotiation, termination, and finally, recovery. Heartbreak feels awful, obviously, but it actually has a brilliant evolutionary logic to it. Sticking around in a relationship that isn't meeting your evolved needs, whether someone is cheating or there's a huge gap in mate value, is an evolutionary dead end. Breaking up is an adaptive mechanism. It frees you up to go out and find a better, more suitable mate who actually aligns with your biological goals.
Okay, finally, part 6, achieving harmony.
Here's the really good news. We are humans, which means we aren't just slaves to our biology. We have the unique power to transcend it. Just being aware that your partner's desires are the result of thousands of years of evolution and not some personal attack against you can foster massive empathy. When a guy actually understands a woman's hardwired need for emotional security, or a woman gets a man's visual triggers, they can stop blaming each other and start communicating openly. It takes a willingness to compromise and a fierce commitment to your partnership to override those raw ancestral instincts.
The author of our source material, David M. Buss, puts it so perfectly. He calls modern marriage a crowning achievement of humankind. Think about it. Despite all our hardwired differences, all the deception, and all that evolutionary conflict we just talked about, the fact that we can consciously choose to overcome our evolved selfishness to build lasting partnerships is basically a miracle. It is a genuine triumph of humanity over biology.
So I want to leave you with one final, provocative question. We've just unlocked the hidden evolutionary forces shaping our deepest attractions and our biggest relationship conflicts. You now literally know the science of desire. So how are you going to use this awareness in your own love life? Are you going to let evolutionary blind spots dictate your reactions, or will you use this knowledge to build deeper empathy, better communication, and lasting harmony in your own relationships? Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. Until next time, keep learning and keep growing.